In this issue of Fashion Classics, gain insight into the power of a couture label.
Actually, if you look back into the history of haute couture, it was actually started by an Englishman, Charles Worth, in about the 1850s, 1860s.
Through its golden age in the 1950s, when models paraded elegantly in couture salons, a time when designers like Christian Dior and Hubert de Givenchy were still designing their own couture lines. Through the 60s, when Yves Saint Laurent was the first couturier who opened a ready-to-wear boutique.
It's a long way to make money in fashion, and to build a name, to establish the image, and that is important.
Now, the couture label is reinterpreted, first for ready-to-wear collections, then further into a plethora of international licenses.
It creates an image for a much bigger company that has products that go all the way from hosiery to lipstick to shoes to duty-free shopping, scarves, ties, and that's very important.
Also meet a new designer with haute couture in his jeans. Two of the biggest names in fashion, Christian Lacroix, Chanel, and more next. Coco Chanel was one of the true mavericks of the haute couture movement. It was bold audacity that led her to introduce women to pants. For the house's recent couture collection, designer Karl Lagerfeld harkened back to Coco's era, where his models wore the pants.
Everybody wears pants. It was time to make a collection, even for high fashion, only with pants. The idea was pants with everything, because I noticed that in my studio all the girls had pants and no skirts, so even the evening dresses, to move in a modern way, I thought it was good to make chiffon pants, and everything can move, everything can float, everything can run. I thought it was a modern attitude for couture for today. It was a kind of 2001 Coco Chanel look, what she would do if she would be a woman of 25, 30, 35 today.
The classic Chanel look was further enhanced by the couture beauty team.
The style of the hair for the show Haute Couture of Chanel is a bit Coco Chanel, a bit of a schoolgirl, but not well done. The hair is on purpose, not well done, but there is something very specific of Chanel also in that look, which is a bow and satin on the left side of the girl. And this is always like this in the house of Chanel, since ever. It's a classic from the house.
The general look of the makeup, the feeling is always very light and fresh, but this feeling of Coco Chanel marked in the strength of the eyebrows.
Couture has to be very diversified.
Accessories exemplified the look of the modern Chanel woman.
They're very important because they're very Chanel, but the new Chanel are the rings, no bracelets, no earrings, pearls, of course, clips to fix the thing, and the new thing is rings on the feet. Every collection is the first collection and the last collection, so it means a lot every time, but couture is something very pleasant to make, very special, what you cannot compare in the rush of ready-to-wear and all that. It's another thing, it's more detailed, you spend a lot of time for very little, but that's part of the game.
Lagerfeld masterfully blurs the line between couture and ready-to-wear each season. For his pret-a-porter collection, he sent out waves of classic Chanel with a youthful twist.
The runway was like a wave, and there's a famous Austrian play from the last century called The Waves of Love and the Wave of the Sea. And so it was Chanel's idea for the wave of Chanel, the wave of peace, love, and whatever you want. I wanted the movement of the waves, like the hemlines. I wanted a very discreet transparency. I wanted nothing aggressive, but soft.
Lagerfeld sent an upbeat message via motorcycle ensembles and pops of color. The classic Chanel suit also made a showing, albeit slightly updated and sexier, replete with the usual Chanel accessories from head to toe.
I wanted it to be very Chanel and very today. Whatever that means today, after what happened, what will come, what the next summer may be. We don't make commercial clothes, we make clothes we hope somebody will like.
Paris. dress in spring means, among many things, the unveiling of the results of months of winter toil. Simplicity is the keynote of these cashmere dresses and dainty prints for afternoon wear. The hats, tiny and chic, with candy stripes. They cover one ear, leaving the other to the tender mercies of the coiffeur. A soft gray is a dominant color note in spring's salute to fashion. Skirts are full and the hourglass figure is again glamorized. Decidedly, prints will play a major role in the couturier's welcome to the season, but something new has been added and taken away. The collar line is high in front and low in back. Dresses and coats follow the flowing motif, amply cut in the back and rising to a snug collar. But not all hats are tiny. The picture hat stages a comeback for afternoon wear. Yes, there's a hint of a bustle in the rustle of spring.
New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art celebrates extraordinary design in an exhibition entitled Extreme Beauty, The Body Transformed.
A lot of the avant-garde designers question passed-on notions of what beauty is. It looks at the different zones of the body and the way that fashion has manipulated those zones to conform to a period ideal. The first gallery is neck and shoulders, and we begin it with some x-rays of padang, which are groups of people who extend the neck visually by transforming the collarbone. Interestingly enough, contemporary designers have also done similar things in their own collections. I would say that the long neck definitely has to do with aspiring to a more youthful line. The most compelling example in this exhibition are a pair of wooden wings that Alexander McQueen created. One of the most interesting zones of the body is the bust for women, because in the 20th century, for the first time, the bust is seen as two separate breasts. What that pairing of Madonna with the imagination of Gautier has done has brought the idea of constructed underwear really to the mainstream. We have something like Tom Ford's bustier, which shows the normal breast. It's the first time, I think, in the last 500 years that the natural bust is seen as the ideal shape. If there's one garment that is the most important in the exhibition, I would say it's the corset. In our exhibition, we have everything from a 16th century reproduction of an iron corset to a cyborg suit by Thierry Mugler, which encases the whole body in a kind of carapace like a corset. Most designers conform to fashion history in the sense that they prize a small waist. Hips are a zone which are very sensitive to contemporary women, but in the past, the hips augmented were very much prized. In the 19th century, the most aberrational thing, I think, that happened was in the 1870s and 1880s, where bustles extended the derriere of a woman up to 3 feet. We have a very subtle contemporary version with the A.F. van der Vorst saddle harness. One of the funniest bustles is done by Vivienne Westwood. The bustle pad is placed outside the skirt rather than under the skirt. The shoe gallery establishes that the footprint is rarely what the shoe is shaped like. It's generally coming to a point or it's blunted. It's very rarely the asymmetrical shape that it is when we're barefooted. Clothing is a social act. We don't have to wear clothing if we're alone. It's very, very potent as a means of communication. This show has to do with people who want to present themselves in a way that is culturally breathtaking.
A periscope. What's the target? A fashion preview without the designer's knowledge. In the world of haute couture, all the rage are cloaks and daggers. Pirating new designs is big business. As these expose films show, no matter how the honest designers try to protect themselves, the pirates are always a leg up on them. Innocent doodling or friendly back-scratching turns out to be real undercover work. Another coup for the corsairs on a no longer exclusive design headed for the cut-price market.
Coco Chanel put her name on the fashion map by introducing Chanel No. 5 perfume in 1921, successfully parlaying a couture name into one of the biggest beauty brands. In Paris, we talked beauty with Susan Sterling, Chanel's international makeup artist.
The house of Chanel, she was a maverick, and she changed the way that women dress, the way they view beauty, the way that they lived in the terms of fashion and clothing. So beauty was another extension of that. But Paris itself has always been very fashion and beauty oriented. So it gave me a view immediately about detail. Well, I've been a freelance makeup artist for 18 years. I started in the United States, and then I quickly moved to Paris, and I lived here for over 10 years, and I've been in New York now for 7 years, and I come back and forth, and this is really exciting to have the position as the international makeup artist for Chanel.
Although now contracted to Chanel, Sterling has also painted the faces of famous women from Hollywood to the White House.
I had the opportunity to do our president and first lady, Mr. and Mrs. Bush.
Susan created a dramatic evening look with Chanel's glamorous new color palette.
We're here on the rooftops of Paris, and I'm going to show you our new spring collection, which is bright and colorful. All right, let's start with Elise. Let me just brush through her eyebrows here. I'm going to start with the base color of the new Lumiere, and I'm going to create a base color all across the lid. Remember to blend. So we're just going to create this as we go along here. I'm going to start with a deeper shade now, and I'm going to work from the outer corners in to intensify the color. I'm going to take this also just down right underneath. I want to use this beautiful lavender, and then I'm going to get it wet, and you'll see how strong it really can be. All right, so now let's use the gold. I love putting this right in the center of the lid. You'll see when she opens her eyes that it's really going to make them pop out. Now let's do some blush. I'm going to use this metallic tone that's a soft pink rose called Fantasia. Let's go ahead and fill in the lips. But now, let's really have some fun and make the lips even more dramatic for evening. And here we are, this is it. The new spring collection from Chanel.
If really you are attracted by couture, I think is why because you are born for that. You know, I think it's something really you have in your skin. Is possible to say.
The name Givenchy is synonymous with the glamour of couture, and over 50 years, Hubert de Givenchy expanded his empire to include ready-to-wear and licensed luxury goods. These days, the name Givenchy is popular with fashionistas for another reason. French-born James de Givenchy has started his own jewelry collection under the family name of Taffin, a name he shares with his legendary uncle, Hubert de Givenchy.
The first thing I see is that you either fall in love with the stones, and nature is just full of those wonderful patterns and surprising patterns. And from there, it's a great base to start from. The stone will inspire the piece that I will make. It's about the cut, the way it comes to you, the color, where the color is, how it's situated in the stone, and how it gets back to you. I find the stone and then I draw around it. Every stone is beautiful. I mean, whether it's a sapphire and a real blue, but sapphires come in every color, which is wonderful. The sapphire has a great life and brilliance. The diamonds, of course, are just diamonds. They'll never be matched for brilliance, but they are, the cuts is what will make them interesting. The way it's mounted is a very simple mount where we're trying not to show any metal or as little metal as possible. You'll see that the stones actually are, the diamonds seem to be floating between the stone, and I think it's nice to make jewelry not too serious. You know, it's everything that we try to do has a little bit of a, it's a little whimsical. Jewelry is about surprise. It should be, the pieces, you should look at them and then see more in it. It's not just, you know, be able to go past the first impression, turn them around and be surprised. And that's a big thing. Most of the jewelry we do, whether it's that clock or a simple ring, is great to just hold and appreciate on both sides.
In Paris, the closely guarded summer collection of the House of Dior has its first preview, and the showing is a sensation throughout the world of haute couture. These 4 flowery garden party dresses are typical of the new line, which, like other Paris collections, marks a return to the look of the 1920s, but unlike other collections, bears the mark of a new designing talent. Wearable but elegant is the hallmark of all of them. Less flutter and more shape, despite the tight hip lines. This collection marks a triumphant debut by Marc Bohan, new couturier for the House of Dior, who helps bring back the fashions of Prohibition days and the high style of the 60s. In these cocktail dresses, trim hips and crisply flaring skirts typify the overall trend for the season ahead. Compensating for the simplicity of line is an emphasis on the decorative accent, embroideries or pearls in generous measure. A wide spectrum of bright colors is also employed by Bohan, whose first show leaves no doubt a major new figure has arrived in the world of fashion.
From Ulrika Liljadal's hands are born the most glorious of couture textiles. A favorite of French couturiers, this Swede is making modern, old-world techniques.
I'm a textile designer, so I'm designing textiles, so it could be like any technique with knitting and crochet and macrame.
Her labor-intensive creations are known for their textural depth and unusual palette, a perfect match for couture's one-of-a-kind philosophy.
I started with knitting, and actually I needed to have something more. It's always a challenge to find something new. I really like to combine poor or rich or shiny or matte. Nice to touch, to have, so that's quite important too. This one is quite interesting too, one for Christian Dior. It's all in very, very thin plastic yarn. This was quite an interesting dress because I did the dress in white. Then it was painted. When you look at it, it's like, ooh.
Credited with rediscovering modern couture when he launched his house in 1987, Christian Lacroix is now considered part of the old guard. With his signature use of black lace and crisp taffeta, Lacroix has developed a new language for the prestigious art form.
Couture is a very selfish collection. It's a very self-expression. We have to be different, not only from ready-to-wear, but to be different from the other designers, other couturiers, same week, because couture has to prove a deep individuality. That's the duty of couture.
His couture collection for fall 2001 was an eclectically ethnic romp.
I'm not a great traveler. I love to look at pictures, movies, images, books. But come to couture, it's easier for me be cooler, and of course to keep something which is me. I'm not so fancy, I'm not so funny in my life. It's why I need to be excited by this kind of phantasm, but I want each number to be wearable. Everything is so the same. I'm a little bit sad when in London I feel the same spirit as in New York, where 20 or 30 or 40 years ago it used to be so different, and I try to capture this sense of individuality that each woman has.
Despite his penchant for the fantastical, Lacroix still has a firm grasp of fashion reality.
Sometimes it's just the top or just the pants, but everything is proportioned, balanced in the right way for a customer. I think that my duty is to keeping the right balance in between phantasm, dream and fantasy and figures. Because tomorrow I have appointment with real customer, with flesh, bones, mind, everything.
Lacroix retains the same pragmatism when it comes to his ready-to-wear collection. For spring 2002, he kept in mind the views of the few who dare to criticize the master of modern couture.
I tried to find balance in between softness and muscle, with leather, with some A-line coats, and to be quite a little bit romantic with all this Victorian inspiration, but mixed with something more like, not warriors, but a little bit.
This collection was less aristocratic, more bohemian. In keeping with the general spirit, his silhouettes were soft and fabrics took on a worn, distressed feel.
I think that we needed something, of course, softer, but not because of September the 11th, because all the collections were ready since weeks and months. I think that as designers we have something plus which make us able of translating not the future, because it's our duty. It's softness, but with underneath something very strong.